Okay, explaining this one is probably gonna take a while, so hopefully you're not impatient. I'm gonna show you two techniques. One is called UV splitting, and the other one is basically just adding smooth shading across the entire model. But they're also gonna generate two very different UV maps, and I'm gonna show you the differences and try and explain why you get a different result in each of them. So first, let me just go ahead and make a duplicate. I'm just gonna set up the C underscore high, C for cube. Then I'm gonna hide that and do C underscore low, so that I know which one is the high poly and which one is the low poly. And I'm gonna move that one to a separate layer, and this is the high poly. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add a couple bevels, so that we can add a subsurface modifier. By the way, just as you probably already knew, but if you have flat shading, this is going to turn out in the bake. So the high poly always has to be set to smooth shading unless you want the sharp lines for some reason. But if you want, in most cases, you have to put it to smooth. So just keep that in mind. I'm also going to go ahead and add another set of just so that it looks a little bit, yeah, whoops, I deleted it. There we go. Just so that it's a bit more consistent and flat on the top, or on the sides rather. Then I'm going to go ahead and UV unwrap the low poly one. Just going to select everything and scale it down slightly. That's not necessary, actually, but I just like having boundary around it. We can do a bit bigger, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. So at this point, I'm going to first, let me just tell you what I expect. Every single line you can see here is going to look good. All of these lines are going to look good in the bake, besides this, and this, and these three. Like every line that's black will have the weird artifact on it, and all the red lines where I have the seams are going to be just fine in the bake. So just kind of remember where I put the lines. I put the lines on every line this way, here, kind of around here, and I also made a U shape on the top. So nothing on the bottom and one line on the top. Those three are where we're going to see the artifacts. So I'm just going to go ahead and export OBJ. Don't forget to check select only if you're doing an export, and I'm just going to call this C underscore low export and C underscore high. There we go. I'm also going to be using, the reason why I'm exporting, by the way, is I am going to be using Substance Painter for the baking. It's just a personal preference. It's not going to change anything. You'll get the same artifacts no matter which program you use to bake, unless the program for some reason has been made to counteract those artifacts specifically. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the low poly first. Like so, this is the front. So all these sides are going to be baking fine. This one is not going to bake fine, and nothing on the bottom is going to bake fine. So just going to set this to, let's do a 1K, we don't need anything higher. And let's go ahead and select the high poly and bake. So as you can see, it looks like we have a nice bake. Everything seems to be good. Unless we go to this side. Here you can see we get the nasty line that you also got. Same if we go on the bottom. You can see the nasty line going all over the place. What I'm going to do, by the way, I'm going to export the textures. Well, the texture rather. I just want the normal map. So the reason why I want to do this, by the way, is simply for comparison. So I'm just gonna have Substance Painter on the other window here because it's not gonna make. There's not really any reason to show you what I'm doing in Substance Painter. Then what I'm gonna do is literally the same thing, but I'm gonna have smooth shading across the entire cube. So now I'm gonna export again, OBJ, low poly, export. Then I'm gonna repeat the same process. So just give me a second. Just doing literally the same thing as I did last time. So don't worry, you're not missing out. One thing that I can show you, however, is with this technique you can see every single side has baked perfectly, even on the bottom. You're not going to see any artifacts. Although it does seem to be a bit sharper, but actually I don't think there is any difference. Yeah, everything is baked perfectly at this point, but one big difference is if I now export the texture, you're going to see a very big difference in the normal map. It looks completely different, and I'm going to try to explain why this happens, because it does make sense. Wait, hold on. Oh, seriously? I have to do it one more time. Okay, just skip the video. Just skip ahead. I'll have to do it one more time. I accidentally deleted the last one, the first normal map. So go ahead, keep skipping. Once you see something happening on this monitor here, at that point I'm done. So just keep skipping. So right now I'm selecting the high poly. Okay, bake. Bake. Nice. And now I'll just go ahead and rename this so that we don't accidentally bake over it. So file, export, export, open folder. There you go. Now you can see the difference. Let me just get rid of these because I don't know what they are actually. But yeah, you can clearly see there is a major difference, and I'm gonna try and explain the difference between them in a moment. But one thing that I want you to understand is if you do bake with flat shading, only this map is going to work, and if you bake with hard shading, only this one is going to work. So what I'm going to do now is go to the normal the node editor, and I'm also going to go ahead and just put in a HDRI so that we get some nice colors. Not image texture, environment texture, open, and I believe it's this one. Yeah, there we go. This is the same HDRI that you can find in Substance Painter, by the way. I'm also going to set this to Filmic Blender, just so that we'll get more color range, and set this to Base Contrast. It'll look a bit more pleasing on the eye. There we go. Just so that it's a bit more easy to look at. So now I'm going to import the two normal maps, and I'm going to show you the different effects they have. by the way, when dealing with normal maps, you have to set these to non-color data, even though they do contain color information. You have to set them to non-color data. And just so you know, hold on. So yeah, this is the nice looking one, and this is the ugly looking one, whatever. So with flat shading first, we have to use this one. And now you can see the bake, it looks great, except for these and these. But if we switch to this one, you can see that it all looks completely destroyed. However, if we now set this to smooth shading, it all of a sudden it should look nice. Wait, hold on. This one should work. Hold on, what's going on? Oh, okay, so this is why I have to set it to non-color data. I forgot to set this one. So now you can see this one looks great on all sides, even on the bottom. But again, if we now change it to the nice looking one, this one, you'll see that it does not look great. So this proves the point that if you bake it with smooth shading, you have to use this normal map. If you bake it with harsh shading, you have to use this normal map. I just wanted to, this is one of the options, by the way. If you just want to be lazy, you can just put smooth shading on everything and use this one. But if you want to do it proper, you can bake it with flat shading and use this one. Of course, when I say flat shading, I mean flat shading where there's supposed to be flat shading. One thing that I am curious about though is whether or not those two actually make a difference. So, okay, so just try and like remember this look. I'm now gonna set it to smooth shading and switch, and those two look they look identical to me. So okay, so there is no difference in the way they look. Now to explain why. Now I'm going to stick to, I'm not going to use these anymore. I just wanted to show this concept. So these ones we can delete. Now we're only going to be working with this one right here. So the reason why we're only getting weird shading on the ones that are not split is because the angle, I don't know if I told you about this previously, but either like you have to do something that's called UV splitting, which is essentially this, but you only do it to the UV. You have to UV split it wherever there's an angle that is greater than typically 30 to 50 degrees. It depends on the model. Sometimes you get the artifact, sometimes you don't. So take this with a grain of salt. But typically, hopefully you can't hear the police. I'll just close the window. Anyways, so yeah, if the angle is greater than, just say about 40 degrees, it depends, as I said, if you do get the artifacts, then yeah, you just have to split the UV. But basically, yeah, if the angle is greater than 40 degrees, you have to add a seam like this. So the correct way to UV unwrap a cube would actually be just adding seams on every single edge like this, but that typically doesn't result in a nice UV map. It'll look like a light map, but it is the correct way to do it. Alternatively, you can have it like this, but you have to do something called UV splitting, which you can do by simply selecting and then just moving this like 1 pixel. You barely have to move it at all, this is where I was gonna say I don't know the optimal way to do this. Like I actually don't have any clue as to what the correct method of doing this is. So this is where you have to do a bit of your own research. But at this point, basically, the only thing you want to accomplish is all of them being split like this. Doesn't matter if they're like basically connected. They can be right on top of each other. Like this, you can do that for every single one. Again, I typically don't use this workflow. I just put smooth shading on everything because I'm lazy. But having flat shading and doing this portion here is the more correct way to do it. That is how they do it in the industry, at least. I've had an argument with an industry expert about this, and my conclusion was basically just do it. It is better. Typically, you run into issues if you try to put it into a game engine. Like everything looks fine here. If I use smooth shading and use the other normal map, it looks fine in Blender, but you can potentially run into issues when exporting everything to other programs. So that is why you have to, or you don't have to, but you should be using this method. Also because the normal map basically looks a lot better than this mess. So yeah, UV splitting. If I were to add a bevel like this, like now this angle is 45 degrees, you might still see the artifact, but it's not as likely. I'm not gonna do another test because, well, I don't have anything to prove really, but yeah, you might not get the artifacts when adding a simple bevel. If I were to add a bevel with another iteration, if I were to make the high poly onto this low poly, I would definitely not get the artifacts. So that is one way to deal with it, just beveling the model, or you can split it, or you can just add seams. Like in this case, I can't just add seams everywhere and unwrap it because at this point I'm getting a light map, as it's called. I could have done this one as well, which is basically the same thing. So hopefully this explained everything. If you have any further questions, let me know and I'll reply to you as soon as I can. This is a bit complicated. You could try and try to understand why it happens down to a technical level. I'm not going to explain too much because it's not really relevant to an artist. It's more relevant to technical artists or those who are responsible for the technical side. I'm not one of those people, by the way. I'm not an expert whatsoever. I was just really fascinated as to why this happened, so that's why I dug so deep into it. Just thinking if there's anything that I forgot. Not that I can think of. No, I think I'm done. Yeah, I'll just call it done. Again, let me know if you have any further questions and I'll reply to you as soon as I can.